Hey everybody, hello sunshine. How are you guys doing today? Happy Friday. I hope you guys are enjoying this beautiful sunshiny day and you're creating your own sunshine where you need to. And maybe that is just as simple as smiling even when you don't feel like it, because every time you smile, you feel just a little bit better. Today on our show, we have David Doerrier, who is a virtual engagement expert and coach, who is going to talk with me today, and somebody that I've had the pleasure of actually getting to hear before and work with, who I think you guys are going to find very interesting. So without further ado, hey, David. Welcome to
Hello.
our show.
Yes,
How are you today?
Amanda. This is beautiful. I am so proud of you and what you've been putting together, and you keep moving forward. This is just absolutely beautiful, and the technology, I love it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you coming, because I was like, hey, you want to come on? Say hi.
The first time I met you through Toastmasters, and you were helping out with an event that we were putting together, I just knew that I wanted to have more of you, Amanda, and you're quite impressive.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, it just takes innovation, right? Like keep trying new things and
Mhm,
seeing what happens
mhm,
and getting feedback too. But it's a lot of pushing all the buttons and saying yes to opportunity. That
mhm.
makes a huge difference, saying yes to an opportunity. Okay, you're all about virtual engagement. I clearly am all about virtual engagement as well. Why do you think that's something people need to take into consideration today?
Hmm. Well, that's an excellent question, Amanda. It's the one way that we have to connect to our audience is through this little lens right here. On a now that I'm larger, now you see my finger even larger right now. On a stage, a speaker or a presenter or a salesperson on a stage, it would be very natural for them to scan the audience. Our reaction to that would be that he had good eye contact or she had good eye contact because they did a good job of scanning the audience. We would say that that speaker had bad eye contact if they looked at the ground the entire
Right.
time or looked up or looked at the PowerPoint or had their back to the audience. Then we would say that they had bad eye contact with the audience, and that would reflect on their presentation. Now, here in the virtual world, if I was to scan my audience in my padded room, it's going to look a little odd. I'm not looking directly at you. So now I'm staring directly. I have been looking directly into that camera. And from your view, it looks like I'm talking to you. And
Yes.
now in 1,000 people on here, I'm talking to each person individually.
Exactly. And that makes a huge difference. I think that is our tip number one, right?
Mhm.
Look into the camera and connect with your friends. Mark Brown says, connect with your friends behind the lens. And I think that's a fun little saying that helps you remember.
I like that. I like that.
How did you train yourself to look into the lens versus,
You know,
do you have
that's
any
a very interesting question.
tips?
I just started doing it, and it just seems to have come natural. However, it is
Really?
not natural because I'm seeing now the type of setup that I have. I'm seeing you in my peripheral vision, myself in the peripheral vision below me. I see my hands flying on the screen. I see your head nodding, but I
Right.
don't see the facial expression. So it did come pretty natural to me. However, I know for a lot of folks, it's not natural to look in that. We want to look at your face. Now I'm looking directly at your face, but I would imagine that my eyes look different to you now that I'm
Yes,
looking into your eyes.
exactly.
Right, right. Uh,
It makes a
so,
huge difference.
so to answer your question, I don't know. It just started doing it, and now it's become a habit. But I do look away, and I if giving a presentation, I would also want to set the stage up front. That at times, because I'm an air traffic controller with all these
Buttons and
monitors and so
gizmos.
on. Exactly. So at times I may have to look away, but just keep in mind that my mind's eye is always with you.
I like that. I think it's something that we all need to work on. One tip and one thing that I did right when I first started is I took one of those, those little sticky, they're like sign here little arrows. And I
Mm-hmm.
put it like towards the camera, and I had like a little smiley face sticker next to it to try
Mm-hmm.
to get me to look there. Now I've gotten used to it, and I try to do as much as possible. And my little webcam has like a little light right next to the camera, so that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of helpful because it's like your eye is drawn to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think you're right. It's a lot of practice and just trying to be intentional about it. And you're not going to be perfect, and that's
Right.
okay.
Right.
That's
Right.
okay. But as long as you are trying and effectively utilizing that specific thing, then it'll already be more engaging.
Well, and here's some ways to work around that. I think you brought up a really good point that it's not going to be natural at first. It's not going to come easy. It's something that you need to practice on. But I would say that there are certain portions of your presentation that it's most important to be looking directly into the camera. For example, during your introduction. Now, again, it's going to depend on what are you speaking about, who are you speaking to. But I would say if you had an introduction, to look directly into the camera during that introduction. Anytime you're asking questions directly to the audience, look directly into the camera. When you're answering those questions, look directly into the camera. So those would be at minimum to be able to do. Now, other times you may have to look at your script, look at your PowerPoint, look at statistics or whatever else. It's okay.
Right. It's okay. It is
Mhm.
okay. That is like my catchphrase. It's okay.
Mhm. Right.
It's all gonna be okay. You, as long as you are trying and you're actively trying, people will see that. If
Mhm.
you don't do it at all,
Mhm.
then there's going to be that extreme disconnect.
Right. Right. Right.
You just had an article in, what was it? Cobb? Toast of Cobb? No, not Toast of Cobb. That's my,
Cobb in focus.
I'm out of focus clearly with what we're talking about. How did you end up getting an article? Why should people go check it out?
Well, I went to a networking event. I met a young lady who is associated with the magazine. She called me up and we had a meeting, and she said, "Would you like to have an article in here?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "Great. Here's how much it's going to cost." So,
Oh, interesting.
however, this, I look at this as marketing.
Right.
It's a
It's a
way to
write-off.
market my business. It's a way to give information and not blatantly selling myself to the audience, but I saw it as a marketing opportunity.
That's awesome. Which is a good thing to note that sometimes you have to pay for things that you assume you might get paid for.
That's what you hope for. I've not had good success with marketing over the years.
It's
I've had
tricky.
a couple of businesses. As you can see, I've been a professional Santa Claus for 30 years.
I love that. I love that. I had no idea at first, and I was like, I bet.
Mm-hmm.
But that's cool. Did you have a lot of engagement this past season virtually? Were you able to utilize the platform?
That's a great question. I did 2 virtual events. Normally, in a typical Santa season, I would do anywhere from 40 to 50 different events.
Whoa.
And most of them were people's homes. Now, I have to say that the first 29 years of these 30 years of Santa Claus, I had a designer beard. I did not have the real beard.
A designer beard.
Yeah, I don't want to call it a fake beard.
He's very fancy, you guys. He had a designer beard.
Well, in the Santa world,
It's fantastic.
and in the
It
Santa
makes
world,
sense.
yeah, it does. Yeah, in the Santa world, the naturally bearded Santas would call our beard a designer beard, and they would call us Clark Kent Santas. You have any idea why they would call us a Clark Kent Santa?
Because it looked too good?
Well, exactly. But no, it's because we could jump into a phone booth and then change into Santa, whereas they had the natural beard.
I see. So you could get away from the character, and they couldn't. Got it. Got it. Your alter ego, which is just you.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that I enjoyed about the designer beard was the anonymity of being able to take it off and then be David,
Right.
and putting that mask on, and then that character that came out, which is in many cases very different than me naturally. I'm an introvert. I'm very quiet. I'd be the guy sitting in the back of the room just observing and
Right.
watching others.
You mentioned something interesting there that I think goes back to our topic. putting on that mask and being something else, somebody else. I think a lot of people feel, and maybe it's conscious for some, but I think more often it's unconscious, that when they do speak, they have to like put on this persona and be super speaker man, speaker woman, whatever you want to call it. Especially in the virtual world. How do you help people get out of that and just understand this is just a conversation? It doesn't have to be anything different. What type of tips do you give? And also, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll be happy to answer those live.
That's cool. So that's a great question about when the camera comes on, that sometimes folks will feel like they've got to put on a show. And I guess my first response would be, I guess, depending on the audience and depending on, if a show is required, of course, putting on that show. But I think you're right, is being more natural. When I did radio broadcasting, I remember I would go out and do live events, and there was a gentleman that came up to me this one time. He says, I listened the other day and you made that mistake on air, and I thought that was cool because it just made you like one of us. Like you were human. You weren't this. Oh, look, David Lanhorn is here. Hey, David, good to see you. He's one of my favorite people.
I got to check in on him too. Hey, David, we got to talk later, by the way.
Yes, he needs to be here with you.
He was. He's come on.
Was?
Yes, he's come on. We had a wonderful time.
So anyway, so it's coming across human, of communicating, and one of the other things I also catch myself is giving feedback. Earlier, we were talking about increasing that virtual engagement, of connecting with the audience. I'm going to go back to your opening, and you said during your opening, you guys. Hey, you guys, I'm glad you guys are with us. Do you recall that?
Now that you say it, I do.
Okay. So this is another one of those ways of engaging, of talking to that one person. Thank you for joining me today. I'm glad you're here. So talk as if you're talking to each person individually. I forget how I ended up getting onto this onto this piece here, but
that part doesn't matter.
I think it was David coming into the room just interrupted our. No, he didn't interrupt at all. I'm glad he's here.
Yes, me too. I didn't realize I said that. I think I always talk plural, and I do think, to your point, that is something I should work on, especially virtually, because in a one-on-one setting or a real setting, whatever, in person, you would welcome everybody because everybody could see everybody else. But there's this different dichotomy that when we are virtual, that we are talking to that one person and not a whole group. I mean, people can't see the other people that are watching. People don't necessarily know unless they make comments that other people are watching, and who. And even somebody asked me recently, they were like, how are your videos going? How's the engagement? Do you see what I watch? And I'm like, actually, I don't, unless you comment or like, or whatever reaction you want to do, which is, if you want to angry face me, I guess that's okay, but I wouldn't like it. But unless there is some sort of engagement from that person, we don't know. So especially when something is live, I was on a live stream this past Monday, and the people in the comments were just having a great time chatting with each other about what we were chatting about. Oh, okay. Whoever just gave me an angry face, I am now upset with you, but I don't know who you are. So just feel my upset vibes. But it was cool because they were able to, be in on the experience without having to be on camera, but they felt like they were a part of it. And they had this great dialogue going that helped move our dialogue along as well. And I thought that was really neat, and something that I always try to tell people for virtual engagement, like, utilize that chat, utilize the reactions, get people involved so that they can internalize that material as well, which I think you probably could talk on.
Yeah.
How when we get involved and we're not just sitting back passively, somewhat listening, maybe not completely listening, then we actually retain that information even more.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's my entire shtick. But I wanted to recognize Rich's comment here that even in personal groups, and I teach this as well, Well, I shouldn't have said that. I mean, this is the same point. That even in live situations, you should also talk to your audience individually. Part of my background, I spent 12 years in radio, and this is very similar to radio.
It
But
is.
you can see us. But in radio, you're taught to talk to each person individually. It's never, how are you all doing today? I'm glad you all are here. Radio is very intimate. It's one-on-one. Television
Absolutely.
is different, and what you may hear you all, the masses. But I want to agree with Rich and Kane. Amanda.
Listen, Cade, I think we're
So,
fighting now.
so yeah, I want to go back now to your question. Could you repeat your question?
Oh, that people retain more when they get involved
Yes.
on the information, and how, I guess, how to get them more involved, and if you think that that is a
Yeah.
good tactic to actually get them to remember this information that you're giving them instead of them just hearing a million things and barely remembering one.
Yeah, you've broken up. You've brought in a lot of stuff here. So let's break this down. So yes, the more engagement, the more the message is going to stick. Now, first defining what is engagement. You mentioned several things such as the chat, using a poll, using a whiteboard, question and answers were some examples that you gave as ways to engage your audience, correct?
Yes. All the things.
All of those are great. Using technology like this, having a good PowerPoint, if videos are used, using the technology to its ultimate capacity without overwhelming and without it being just schmaltzy. All of those things contribute to the retention. However, there's one additional piece, and that is to deliver the message in a way that is relevant, where the learner or participant is now able to visualize it, smell it, taste it, emotionally attached to it within themselves. That is also going to cement that knowledge or that action item into their gut.
And that goes along with storytelling, right? Like utilizing good words that paint that picture. Because sometimes you're giving a presentation, oftentimes actually you're giving something and it is not a two-way street as much. Say you're giving, a keynote speech, or even just a shorter speech than a keynote. There isn't necessarily that interaction, but to be able to paint that picture well and use those descriptive words that hit on all five senses can make a big difference, so that we are internalizing, but also watching that movie play out in our own heads.
Right. So before we went on the air, I was asking your comments about the gentleman who was the Toastmaster, the public speaker. I apologize, I forget
Darren?
his name. Not Darren. The past year winner of
Mike Carr.
Mike Carr. And so I was asking
All the
you
guys.
how he came across, or what you saw in there. And you talked a lot about the technology. Now, I didn't see the other participants. I just saw his presentation, and I agree with of how well he used the camera, how well he looked on camera, the lighting, the sound, all of that I totally agree with. And then the way that you painted the picture of one of the other contestants who wasn't quite up to the same standards with the technology.
Yeah, it can make a difference.
But there was one other piece that I felt that he did really well, and that was on the message. Are there anything in his message that you recall?
He did a really good job at bringing you back into that situation with the projector, and made me feel the feelings he was feeling as that little kid, being terrified of telling his parents, and then being terrified to walk in and be like, it's not working, and what is she gonna do? How is she gonna react to me? And then it just being like, meh. So he did a great job at painting that picture, at getting me to feel nervous or excited. or a little on edge or like, is he going to do it? I don't
Mhm.
know. So
Okay.
he took us on a journey,
Mm.
an emotional journey
Mhm.
that I think helped him stand out as well.
Okay. Was there a color? Was there a color you remember?
All I can think of is blue because he had a blue shirt on, I think.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm
And,
like,
exactly. And that was what the story was about, was his relationship with this little girl that was blue, that had some
oh,
ailment of some sort that was blue, and how he had this emotional connection to her. So great. And that's, you were talking about painting the picture. One of the ways that you're able to paint a picture to your audience, yes, you said it, descriptive words, making it relevant, but the clearer that the speaker can
mm,
see it in their head, the clearer that I can feel, taste, smell, emotionally connect to it, the easier it's going to be for me to paint that picture with words.
that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That totally makes sense because if I'm really in it and visualizing it, it's going to come across more and I'm going to embody it more. Brilliant. All right, Kane, you got a good comment for me now, not this
Yeah.
angry with me comment.
And I
Not sure if
love this
you covered this.
technology. I
Isn't
love
this
this.
cool?
This is
I
cool.
know. I think it's so, I mean, it's a toy for me. I'm not gonna lie. He says, not sure if you covered this, but I was taught that we should think of our presentations as dialogue. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I guess, yeah, using the term dialogue, using engagement, I would feel that. And are we able to bring Kane on and talk to Kane?
I mean, if Kane wants to come on, I can invite him.
I think that in immediately what I feel is that they both achieve the same objective, whether you call it engagement or you call it dialogue. But I'd like to get Kane's point of view on what the objective of how he sees it how it may be different.
I was gonna say, also, Kane, you can totally just put it in the chat. Oh, shoot, he can't.
Shoot, I can't. That's fine.
Aw, Kane,
That's fine.
are you ready?
All right, but
Be
so
fair, he lives in Hawaii,
yeah, I
and
wish.
it's
Oh,
probably
he's in
super
Hawaii.
duper. Yeah,
Okay, cool. Wow, let's all go to Hawaii.
I know.
I lived on
We have to
Guam once.
quarantine
We
there,
could
I think.
we could talk about my time on Guam. So put his question back up again, and
Yeah.
my immediate response, and I certainly want to value his comments here. My immediate response is that dialogue and engagement are achieving the same thing. I want to present the story. I want to deliver it in a way that's going to be engaging, where they can see and feel it in their head. So Kane was saying yes. I think he's agreeing with.
That we should
So
come to
good.
Hawaii.
Whether you use dialogue, and I like that. Dialogue might be an easier word. One of the things we subject matter experts are great at is making things way more complicated than they have to be.
We overthink it too?
Oh yeah, I belong to the overthinkers club.
Gee. So do I, by
Oh,
far.
so but my wife the other day, I was saying that I use the term engagement principles. What principles? Who the hell knows principles? Use strategies. It's engagement strategies. So I'm
Like,
trying to
calm down.
water it down or something.
I think that goes back to like just basic presenting in general is that when you're the expert, you're
Mm-hmm.
used to all your own terms, you're used to all your own, advancements. You don't realize that what you know isn't common knowledge.
Right.
And that's why it's so important too to practice things, to
Mm-hmm.
go in front of an audience that doesn't know what you're talking about and get that feedback, which is where Toastmasters comes in really handy, is you can take a speech that you're going to practice and use and give it to them and be like, does anything in this speech not make sense to you?
Right,
Because you never want to speak over your audience's head. You also don't want to dumb it down to the point where they're like, okay, I am not a child.
Mm-hmm.
But that also involves understanding who your audience is
Mm-hmm.
and where their knowledge is. So if we go and speak to a bunch of Toastmasters, they're going to know things that maybe a bunch of, I don't know, astronomers are not going to know, right? So those are two different places that you might give the same presentation, but your language has to adjust always to them as well to keep their engagement going.
Yes. Agreed. You definitely have to know who your audience is. I see Michelle has joined us. Hello, Michelle. Good to see you. Yes, you have to understand who your audience is, and there's a number of ways that you can do that if you beforehand is speaking to whoever you're organizing this presentation with and finding out who the audience is and what they're looking for, what's the objective, and so on and so forth. Uh, so you packed in a lot of stuff in there.
That's what I do.
And also talking about the subject matter expert of that. Yes, we have all this knowledge in our head. It's very easy I know for me and the people I coach are in the same situation, that just vomiting information to their audience.
Right.
And learning, yes, like you said, who is the audience and what do they need to know? A large part of my background is teaching software products. Sometimes a subject matter expert will go into the room and tell them everything about the software product, from who designed it, who built it, and why they built it, and everything and anything. And all the client wanted to know was, how do I turn it on?
Right.
That's all I need to know. Somebody, please tell me, how do I turn it on?
Because the other thing is, and David Dubois, he's a friend of mine down in Florida. So I got friends all over. Hi, David. Simplicity, right? You want to keep your presentation simplistic so that if somebody wants to know those detailed things, they're going to ask you, right? Like if they want to know the super in-depth things, they're going to ask you, or the person who brought you in is going to be like, hey, we really want to know about X, Y, and Z. You don't want to overcomplicate it so that people aren't involved and just, again, are like, okay, well, I'm just tuning out and then they miss the important thing that they needed to have. Right. You can always expand upon things. You can't retract.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's really, I like the way you put that. It's harder to say that again. Say it again.
It's easier to expand upon things than retract.
Yes. Okay.
I even did that. Look at me. I'm just.
Yes. So I was going to focus on here one of the principles or one of the strategies of engagement. I have 8 of them, and one of them is the principle of complexity. So in this principle or strategy, I want you to visualize a swimming pool.
Okay.
On one end of the swimming pool, you have the deep end. And on the other end of the pool, you have the shallow end In the deep end of the pool represents all complex exercises or complex trainings, complex analogies, complex stuff.
Right.
So the way you described it is, it's hard to go back if we started the training program or started the presentation and the speaker dove directly into the deep end of the pool. And I would imagine, and I ask this question to my clients all the time, and they almost always will say that they know of an experience in their background when they were in a training or a speaker or a salesperson who immediately dove into the deep end of the pool with whatever they were speaking about.
Yeah. And then they're just like overwhelmed instantaneously. And I mean, let's be honest, we tune out. Naturally. We just are like, I can't, or we're so busy trying to figure it out that we're then not getting the information that is coming to us. Michelle kind of talks on this. It is especially hard when you're speaking to a mixed audience. Those who understand the technology or medicine and those who are new. And I think you probably have some ideas on this too. My thought on that is people who know a lot of things will forgive, so to speak, or will be okay with you kind of taking it slow, as long as you don't take it too slow. But even simply just saying like, hey guys, we have a mixed audience here today, so I'm going to go through some of the basics so we can catch everybody up to speed and get everybody on the same page. What do you think about that? How do you handle that situation?
Well, here, this is a great question. I loved your response as well. This is the first thing that comes to mind is I need to, as a trainer, I've come into this situation where, yes, I have a room full of people. I have half the room that are proficient and half the room that are brand new. And now I have to also take into account what is the objective of the day.
Right.
that by the end of the day, everybody in here needs to be able to do X.
That's a good point.
And they need to do it at this proficiency level.
Right. So you have to have that balance.
Yeah. And then I have to look at how much time do I have?
Right.
Oh, I got an hour. You got 20 minutes, Dave. Good luck. You know,
thanks. Appreciate the good luck. Kane loves the kiddie pool idea. Yes, and you got to be able to adjust it on the fly sometimes, right? You need to be able to start at the beginning, and if you find that you get into a situation there's no beginners, you can even poll them too. I did this for our Toastmaster TLI. I was teaching for the education port and pathways, which is the training program for those of you who are not in Toastmasters. I apologize if I go in too deep. But I pulled them at the beginning, like, what do you guys want to get out of today? What's your number one question? And I had like 4 preset questions. So I knew where I needed to spend more time on a subject and really allow for questions, and then where I could kind of breeze through, but make sure that the people who were totally new still got what they needed to out of it.
Yeah. That's perfect. That's something that that I definitely would recommend to anyone of ways to engage. It's not only are you gauging your audience, but you've engaged them as well by having them do an activity of some sort. But it's also giving you to know whereabouts in that pool do you need to start. Do I need to be in the kiddie pool? Or maybe can I start maybe at the 3-foot level or the 4-foot level? Because now everybody is, or at least, well, here's another thing. You train to the lowest level in the room. I think you said this earlier, but in a different way. So if I gauge the audience that at the lowest level of the audience is at the 3-foot and the highest is at the 6-foot, then now I have an idea of who my audience is. And I want to talk about one thing of how would I handle a training situation where I had half the room that was proficient and half the room that was brand new. I would want to have exercises where I could pair up, pair the proficient person with the new person and let them work together. Could be a way, because the other thing that's going to come into play in that environment would be either I'm going to go too fast for the new people or I'm going to go too slow for the proficient people. So I have to find that happy medium. One way to solve that would be to pair them up. I
like that. And then you're changing up the pace too. It's not all, that one highway. Interesting. I think one of the advantages to this virtual environment is having the ability to do a poll like that with a specific question. Whereas in person, back in the day, we'd be like, who's new? And then you get the hand raising, but not everybody always wants to raise their hand. They're not always, whereas I think people are more willing to answer honestly with these virtual polls that are, more anonymous, right? Than they are. And you can go into a more detail and find out exactly what they're looking for rather than a yes, no, or, a simplistic question that can't get you as much. So that's part of the engagement, right? Utilizing these tools that we have, understanding their benefits, and then sharing those ideas with other people. Also, if anybody else has any other ideas they want to throw in the chat, feel free to throw any ideas on the chat as we are talking about this as well.
Cool.
Which is the engagement piece.
All right. So what do we talk about now?
I don't know. We've been talking for 33 and a half minutes. So, I do want to respect your time. I don't want to force you to go long.
I was planning till noon, till 12 o'clock, a whole hour.
We can't. That's fine with me.
So we're talking about engagement. We talked about the using the camera, using the technology, and the talking to one person.
We did.
What else did we talk about?
How to handle different audiences, utilizing different features. I have a question for you. Sure. What is your favorite form of engagement?
My favorite. Go ahead.
As a trainer and then as an audience member, because those might be different.
As a trainer, it's painting that picture with words. It's making it relevant to my audience. Incorporating transitions to make sure that I'm keeping everybody with me. In the way that I describe this, you earlier said you used the term journey,
Yeah.
And what I look at is I have all of my learners or all of the participants. We are all together on the platform waiting for the train. So
Mm.
I've been able to give them instructions well enough that now they have arrived on the training date at the right time. We are on the platform. So I've done my job good up to this point. Now I need to get everybody on the train with me. And to do that, I
Right.
need to create an introduction that's going to give them the value. All adults want to know the value. What's in it
What's
for
in
me?
it for me?
Radio station WIIFM. What's in it for me?
It's a good
If
radio
the
station.
adult learner or if the adult participant doesn't see the value, I'm not going to get them on that train. So now that I have created an opening that now has told the story in a way that they see the value, everybody's on the train. Now my job is to keep them on the train
Right.
all the way to our destination.
Right. And
And
that's huge.
one of the ways to do that is to create transitions.
Mm.
Now, let me put a giant asterisk here. Transitions. Yeah, ding. Can you put that up on the screen?
If
An
I
asterisk.
had, I'm not that fancy yet, y'all, but I need little sound effects and
Yeah,
different animations. That'd be
light
so
bulb or
fun.
something. It says note.
I need to write down different things that I should
Yeah.
have on doc.
So the reason I'm putting the asterisk here is that it's all going to rely on who is your audience, what is your delivery method, what are your objectives. If someone's doing a keynote speech, it may not be appropriate to have, okay, we've already talked about this and we've talked about that. That might not fit in a keynote.
Right.
However, the objective is still the same, is to keep everybody with me all the way to the end of this journey. So in a training situation, I've heard this many times from subject matter experts to say, oh, this is too complex. There's no way that I can train this whole thing without overwhelming them.
Right.
So let's use the example that in this process, there are 10 steps. So I'll create an opening, introduce, what are we doing? We've got the WIFM and all of that. Let's talk about the first 3 steps. Let's dissect these first 3 steps. Let's have some exercises around these first 3 steps. Now that we've completed these first 3 steps, let's do a quick review of what we've done.
Yes.
And there's a number of different ways that you can do this. One is I could verbally say the entire review at this point, or I can create a review that gets my audience engaged. For example, Amanda, what was the thing that we said was most important about looking directly into that camera?
Seeing your audience behind it.
Exactly. Seeing your audience behind it.
Plus, then you put people on notice when you use their names. That's a good point. Use their names.
Yes, use their names. Or if I wanted to ask that to the group, this is a questioning technique is never use closed-ended questions. It's always open-ended question. So I could address it to the group. What was that first thing? What was that first thing I said was most important about looking into that camera? Raise your hand. What was that first thing? So, however, let me also, another asterisk here, is that I would have also included in my introduction or when I set the stage at the very beginning of the presentation, I would have set the stage that here's how I'm going to deal with questions. Here's how I'm going to deal with question and answers. Here's the format that we're going to follow. This is what you can expect from me, the facilitator, what I expect from you. I may even also have some games up front that gets people used to raising their hand, using the chat for simple stuff like, where are you from?
Right.
Things like that. So
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that idea of setting the stage because I think often we forget and then we just surprise somebody with something and then they're like, wait, what are we doing? So setting that stage and letting people know in advance what they're going to expect, not only with the training and the objectives, but how we're going to be utilizing it.
Exactly.
Getting them involved and in doing so in a more natural way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like what you said there about the natural way. The objective would be, this is going to one of the other principles, one of the other strategies and of engagement, and that is the principle of ownership.
Mm-hmm.
So when you hear that principle of ownership, what comes to mind?
Taking ownership for the information, making people feel like it's their own. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Exactly. So during that introduction piece, it's not me saying all the valuable things about being present, and when we get to the end, you're gonna have this great success from this, but they have to feel it, taste it, smell it, have that emotional connection to it themselves.
That makes sense. Because if they don't pull it in for themselves, then they're not necessarily going to utilize it or
Yep.
put it back out there in the world, depending on what you're trying to get out of it.
Yeah. I want to give two examples here. One example of the being surprised, and the other example about. I'll go to that one second. Let me talk about a training situation. I've had a number of training situations where I walked into the classroom and nobody wanted to learn. Nobody wanted to make the change. Now, my job was training software to organizations that have purchased our software, and in most cases, either replaced an existing software that they had been using forever, or a paper-based process, or whatever process they had that they loved forever. And now there's this guy coming in, going to show us this new software. Some guy upstairs was the guy who bought it, who I don't even know who it is.
He doesn't even use it.
Exactly. And this new software is going to steal my job, and it's going to do this and do this. And everybody's been talking about it at the lunchroom. And oh my God, that's where I am.
Right. That is not a good space to walk into.
It's not. But as a trainer, I find this as an enormous opportunity. I love these opportunities. Yeah, it's scary. Yeah, there's sometimes I never come out the other side looking good. But the challenge here is that I need to facilitate the conversation in a way, facilitate my questions in a way where the audience is going to get the whiff them. What's in it for me? All right, now I see the value. And in a lot of cases, what's also working against me is that all 12 of these people in the room all work together.
Right.
So it's not like each person is coming from different organizations. They got a pact. So that's how you have to approach it. Yeah, I can stand up in front of the room and scream till the cows come home about how great this thing is. Right. I've got the best PowerPoint, the best technology, but they ain't going to listen to me if they don't see it.
Right. So you got to make them own it.
The other thing was being surprised.
Yes.
Personal experience yesterday, Toastmasters contest.
Oh.
They had the international speakers spoke. Mm-hmm. They had all the time that they needed for the judges to get into the breakout rooms. And now there was a period of time. Normally, the contestants would be interviewed, but in this particular case, they were going to be interviewed at the end, because the same contestants with international contests were going to be participating in the evaluation contest. So that left a gap in the middle. The contest master then said, okay, let's do table topics, and called on a person who I guess had left the room.
Wasn't paying attention. I was there for this, actually. Now you're telling the story. I was there.
That's right. You were there. That's right.
I was called on.
You were called on. That's right. How did I forget that? Exactly.
I was paying attention, at least, though.
However, you were the second person called on, so at least you had some sort of warning that this was coming.
As soon as they said it, I was like, oh, dang, turn on the camera, pay attention. I'm good. I'm ready to go. Hi.
Exactly. Exactly. So here's an occasion where up front, setting the stage, listen, during the middle, normally we're going to do this, but because now we have people that are going to be part of the evaluation contest, we'll interview them at the end.
Right. And having a game plan and understand, first of all, one, things always go wrong. And two, you always need like something in your pocket to jump to because especially with something like a contest,
Mhm.
there is going to be dead air.
Yeah. Yeah. You know,
Yeah.
and that's interesting. And we chatted about this the night of the event. And normally when we're in a room together, when we got to that point in the contest where the judges needed their time to finish their evaluations, that time to leave the room, there were several minutes, and it seemed okay to be silent. It seemed okay to be in the room because everybody had been in the room and kind of knew what was going on.
Well, and had
But
mingled beforehand.
exactly. However, with virtual, what I would recommend getting to that point is once in a while the contest masters first introduce, why are we doing this? Why are we taking these few minutes? Speak to us as if we've never been to a Toastmaster contest before, and
Right.
then periodically say, thank you for your being quiet. Thanking the audience. Maybe it just needs to be that. Thank you. Will be the judges will be finished shortly, or something as simple, something very simple, not a whole lot of dialogue during that silent time.
Right. Giving that a acknowledgement makes a huge difference.
Yeah, you definitely.
Or
Go ahead. Go ahead.
play some music.
Play some music. Definitely a radio station. I can think of a radio
Can
station
you?
right
I
off.
was wondering, sir, do you know of a radio station?
I do. Yes. Classic Long Island Radio.com or CLIradio.com. And I'm sure we could put that in the chat.
Oh, watch this. What is
Now,
it? Classic.
Classic Long Island Radio.com. I need everybody who's on with us now to go quickly. CLIradio.com. This is all 60s and 70s. This is my radio station or music channel. There's no commercials. I put this together 5 years ago, and it's AOR, album oriented rock. Yes, you'll hear a lot of music that you recognize, but you will hear even more music that you don't recognize, all from the
Especially at that
60s and
younger
70s.
age. What I think is good about utilizing a music option virtually, it's way easier than you think it is to
Mhm.
do. And it just gives us all something to connect with
Mhm.
because we already feel disconnected because we are virtual. We
Mhm.
already feel a little weird, but also comfortable, right? Like we're in our own homes. We
Mhm.
probably don't have shoes on. We might have pants. We might not. Who's to say, you know? I don't know. I'm just saying.
Pants check.
But it gives us all something that we're enjoying together
Mhm.
and helps us feel connected because we're all like listening to the same music, bopping along.
Mhm.
And that's an opportunity as well that you can be like, hey, we're just going to play some music. Feel free. If there's a song that comes on that you love, turn your
Mhm.
camera on and have a good time or, say something in the chat, whatever you
Mhm.
might want to do.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Let's see if there are any questions out in the audience.
Yeah.
Kane, Michelle, David,
I
two
don't know who's
Davids
still
with
here.
us, three Davids. We've got
You have
triple
three
D.
Davids? Nah.
Yeah, we had David Dubois,
Dubois.
sorry, and David Lawhorn,
Oh, that's
and
two.
me.
Oh, yeah.
Hello.
I'm like, that's only two, Dave. That's
and I am a triple D, David Dwight Doerrier.
Oh, really? Your parents
Yeah.
did that to you, huh?
Well, my dad wanted Dwight David. I was born during the Eisenhower era. My father wanted Dwight David. My mother wanted David Dwight. And you see who won that argument.
That's okay. I mean, my name is intentionally rhyming, Amanda May Gray. That's a real name. My parents
Mhm.
really came up with that for me. But my grandmother's middle name was May, and then she married my grandfather. So then she was Carol May Gray.
Mm.
And I didn't like my name growing up. I'm going to tell you guys a true
Mm.
story. I did not like my name that much. Well, I did, but I was also like, oh, I don't know what to do with it. Like, people would make fun of me. Kids make fun of everything.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Absolutely everything.
yes.
So we talked about contest season and contests for Toastmasters. And of course, I got a lot of Toastmaster friends out there, and I got a lot of friends doing the contests. This is try having Caden. Oh, I'm sure that's a difficult one too, Caden. I'm sure you probably have a lot of different things. But I was like, Amanda Panda. There was. I also got like the man, duh, and I'm like, oh, creative. Yeah.
Amanda. Well, look at my last name, Doerrier.
Oh yeah, you probably got a good amount there.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Doerrier.
Yeah. And the triple D. Yep. Anyways, my question was virtual engagement for the contest platform is different. You only have 5 to 7 minutes. How do you think people can ensure they're keeping their audience with them versus just giving a speech and not having them as involved? Because I think engagement is still super important with a contest. Thanks, Albert, for laughing at us, by the
Well,
way.
I think it's important in any presentation that you're doing, whether it's a contest or whether it's a regular Toastmaster speech or a presentation that you're giving at work. It has to be the same. It has to be engaging, has to be relevant to your audience. And going back to the international speech, the champion of last year, the way that he went through that presentation, it was very descriptive. I saw the people, I saw the colors and so on through that. And that needs to be in any speech, whether you're face to face or virtual, but even more so now, painting that picture with words. So is that answering your question?
Yeah, I think so. I just think we were kind of talking about it earlier how people get a little hung up on their own stories and forget to do the with them. What's in it for me? Why should I be listening to this?
Yeah.
And making sure that you're taking your audience on a journey with you, not your audience is watching the journey you're going on.
Yeah. We heard 3 speakers the other night, and each speaker, again, all great Toastmaster speakers, all getting out there and doing it, competing, speaking at their clubs. That's what you have to do to get better.
You do.
It's also getting feedback. And one of the things that I saw in those speeches, was all about, this is what I did. This is what I experienced when that guy talked to me this way. I talked to him this way. I felt this way. It was all about that story about what I did. Well, how does that benefit me? Where's the learning in that for me? One of the speeches that we observed, what the best opening was at the very end of the speech. The very last sentence he said, and it was, I'm paraphrasing here, what experiences have you had in your past that keep you stuck? So when you hear that question, what came to your mind, Amanda?
Oh my God. So many things have made me stuck. Don't ask me this question.
No, that's fine. You don't have to be specific about it, but you saw something.
So many things. Oh, who does it? Okay, put it in the chat. When he just asked that question, did you see something? Yes, no, or what it was? Because I think you're right. People are going to envision something, but what's key behind that is to make sure you pause and allow the audience to answer the question. If you do not pause and give the audience time to answer a question that you just asked, it's almost like a slap in the face, right? It's almost like somebody's like, stop it. Stop thinking now. And you're like, wait, what? I was just thinking.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing that we don't always do. We got to make sure we have that pause. Kane says the first thing came to his mind was fear.
Okay. So again, there was that emotion. Now, the reason that I felt that was a great opening, because it was getting the audience immediately involved in it. Now the speaker's challenge now is to keep us, yes, talk about your experiences and what you face, but word it in a way, phrase it in a way that we get value from this. For example, has anyone here ever had a bully at school? Because that was one of the things that was part of the presentation, was talking about his experience with a bully in school. Or have you ever worked for a boss that was unreasonable? There's a million different options to come up with questions or stories somehow to get us to think about times in our past that we may have experienced that, or saw a TV show that had a character like that, or a movie like that we had some sort of emotional connection to to get us to think, yeah, I know what it's like to be a bully. But him just talking about how he was, it was just so personal about his interaction with the bully that I just didn't have any connection with it.
Yeah. I was talking to Michael Davis on Wednesday. If you guys didn't see that, it is still up. You can definitely go check it out. And we were talking about hosting and some best practices for hosting. And the same thing came up. Stop making it about yourself. We as humans tend to make things about ourselves. Like, that's what we do. It's where our comfort zone is, right? But no matter what the position is, whether or not you are the host, if you are having a conversation like this, you're giving a speech, you're giving a keynote, nobody wants to watch or listen unless they're getting something out of it for themselves. Mm-hmm. So to always in the back of your mind, remember what's in it for them, talk about them, pull them back in. Because otherwise, what are you doing it for, really? Mm-hmm. And I'm guilty of this. So not to put on myself on a high horse, but I am definitely guilty of it as well. And it's a learning curve. It is totally a learning curve. It is going to take time and it's going to take practice. Mm-hmm. So if you are speaking once a month or once every 3 months and expecting to get better, it's not going to happen. You got to do it like anything else a whole bunch of times. Albert, hi Albert. Albert's up in Canada. This is a good reminder. I needed to fix my beginning of a speech I'm working on. Oh, well, David Clark can help you with that.
And let me quickly give one additional example around this because of what Albert has brought up. There was I was evaluating a Toastmasters speech. The premise was about this young lady who ended up in a ditch with her car, and an enormous number of hours that she ended up in that ditch until she was rescued. However, the first, this was 5 to 7 minutes, the first 2 to 2.5 minutes of the speech was all about what day it was, where was I, who was I with, where was I driving from, what route was I taking to get there. We didn't know about the ditch at all at this point. And then eventually 2.5 or so minutes later, we got to the ditch.
And how long was the speech?
5 to 7 minutes. So now we had which was fine. I think it was, the opening I felt would be better is something along the lines, I ended up in a ditch, or I spent 20 hours in a ditch in my car with gas leaking around me. Setting that picture, or somehow setting that picture up front of this disaster, of this unbelievable.
Why are you telling me this? Right. Why are you telling me all about getting to this ditch? I don't know what you're talking about. And then all of a sudden you get hit with it. Yeah. Yep.
Kane said, start with your stories closer to the end. And I can't tell you how many times I've evaluated. And again, I'm not trying to fault Toastmasters. I mean, people are getting up there and they're doing their thing, and they're doing the best they can.
Somewhere.
I can't tell you how many times I have found a much better opening somewhere closer to the end, as Kane said, than in the beginning. In this case, I ended up in a ditch. Somehow that has to be the opening. And then you can back up a little bit. Then you can kind of paint the picture of, and then wham, you hit him again with, I ended up in the ditch.
Right. Right. It's all about being willing to learn and understanding that there's probably more out there than you know. So we talked about this too, is you need to be willing to make adjustments, but you also need to be willing to expose yourself to different people and different things so that you can see what's working better. Because if you only hear the same 5 speakers over and over again, then you're not going to realize there's other ways of doing things that could be better.
Yeah. Well, Amanda, we've talked about a lot of things today, and I can continue on. I'm enjoying this, but I got to go have lunch.
It is noon. I want to thank everybody for showing up, putting in the comments. Again, if you're watching this on the replay, feel free to still add your comments in there. We'll be happy to answer anything that you guys may have for questions or interact with this the other way. David, thank you so much for coming on with me today.
This is great. Thank you, Amanda.
I had a good time. I hope everybody else did. And check out David. He is a fantastic coach. He can help you out with your virtual engagement as well and your presentations overall. Check him out anywhere. Where are you at? Where's the best place to find you?
Well, Well, here at the house, but
No, like online, like LinkedIn, Facebook.
presentyourwaytosuccess.com. Presentyourwaytosuccess.com. And don't forget, it is a requirement for at least the rest of today,
Mhm.
or at least the rest of your lunch hour, to listen to my radio station, CLIradio.com. .com.
.com. I know. The first time I met you, I was like, he's got a really good radio voice.
All right. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, David. We'll see you guys. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.